The next movement in our Hanna cat stretch series is the skiing movement. And the skiing movement really starts to bring this focus right down into the legs. So I'm going to show you from the end this way, first of all, so you can really see how the leg movement, which is the primary focus of this, works. So the legs start straight. And we're going to start with my left leg, and you start by turning the ankle inward so that your foot is starting to bring its sole facing toward the opposite leg. And if you just think of like stroking along the side of the opposite leg with your foot until you come up to about the knee, so that as you approach the knee on the right foot, your left knee is starting to fall off toward the side. And you'll notice that as that happens, you start to get, once again, that kind of twisting in the pelvis, more weight going into that left hip. So you get that kind of feel of how that movement connects into the hip. And there's a very important piece about this, which is that the foot never really is fully supported with the floor. So you're just kind of stroking along that right leg, and the weight, therefore, because you're not pushing into the floor with your foot, the weight comes down through the knee and into the hip, and you get much more of a sense of really giving into that hip. You do the same thing on the opposite side. So if you take my right foot and come up toward the knee, let that right knee fall out, and let that weight go into that right hip. Now this is a diagonal movement that goes through the whole torso. So watch what happens now if we come back through the left leg, let that knee fall out, and then let your head, and perhaps even help this, you know how we did this before with the diagonal arch and curl, you can help it by bringing your elbow up and just rotating out a little bit to the side with your head and elbow, so you get more weight into that left or that right shoulder. So you get more weight into that right shoulder, and you get more weight into that left hip, and just kind of feel how they work with each other. And then trying the same thing with right leg, hip. You can also just turn your hand outward and let your head fall across to the side, and you'll get the same kind of effect of moving into that right shoulder and moving into that left shoulder and into that right hip. And then just come back down again. So that's the first half of the skiing motion. The second half is to take this movement where you externally rotated the leg, and now we see what happens if we internally rotate it. So in this case, you start turning your foot outwards, so the sole's facing outwards, start bending at the knee, and this is a little trickier because you've got to keep this foot just slightly off being supported by the ground so that you're not pushing into the ground, and letting your knee fall across toward the opposite leg. So you get a little bit of the weight coming into that right hip as you do that, and your head turns across toward the left. So you've got right hip, left shoulder, and you'll see that there's a little bit more effort into this one because you're really taking a full load of your hip and leg. And our legs aren't so used to kind of letting that lengthening happen out of the glute and the external rotators and supporting this kind of movement. But if you put them together, you'll find that they start to coordinate much better, and this is a really good movement for helping open up hips and lower backs. So you would do the same thing on the right side. First of all, going with your knee falling outward, your head turning across to the opposite side, coming back to center. Now you let the sole of your foot turn outward, your head turns across to the right as your knee comes down toward the opposite knee, and you feel that connection from left hip across the right shoulder. And then coming back down again.